Our first session is on women investors and women venture capitals. I'm going to invite our first panelists. Millie Srivastav. She heads Diago India Venture. Maya Chandrasekharan, co-founder Green Artha. Swapna Dasgupta, Director Qualcomm Ventures. Lavanya Ashok, Partner Growth Equity, Trifactor, in conversation with our very own Sri Krishna, a venture capital and an investor. Thank you.
I'll take this one, please. Lovely. Thank you so much, Sadhna. It's really nice to be here. And first up, a big thank you to Sadhna, Ravi, and the program committee at Bangalore International Center for really picking a topic like this. I was telling colleagues on the panel that something like this is usually found in VC, in venture capital conferences or investing conferences, but not in a broader forum that's known more for arts and literature and topics like that. So it's just really thoughtful of BIC to have brought something like this together. So I'll start with that and say thank you. We have four professionals from the investing world, each with very varied backgrounds and diverse experience. While Lavanya and Swapna are academically have a background in financial services. I think Millie and Maya have sort of gotten in, but many years of experience now, not just in financial services, but in investing itself, and we'll touch upon their journeys and how that's evolved over time. So you'll hear that, and also really focus on what needs to change and how could we perhaps be doing that. I know Ravi mentioned that my name goes with the session, but I'll also add that I'd like to believe that my qualification for being here is until not too long ago in the fund that I manage, which is Unitas. I was the only male member in an 8-member team. And of course that's changed now because people have sort of grown and moved on, which is a great thing. But we were quite pleased about the fact at that point in time. So with that, I thought just a couple of minutes in terms of context and what we are about. So venture capital investing and venture capital and private equity is what globally is termed as an alternative asset class. And in general in financial services, and I think more so within venture capital and private equity, I would say that the women leadership positions women in leadership positions is a very small number, which is why when the likes of an Arundhati Bhattacharya or more recently a Madhvi Puri Buch make it to the positions and get are in those positions, it is celebrated and rightly so. And just in terms of statistics, globally, around 20% of people working in alternative assets or in this realm of financial services are women. And I think out of that, around 21.8% of venture capital employees are women. So basically 1 in 5 professionals in this space that we operate in are women. I think those numbers are actually lesser in India. Typically, I would say 10 to 12%, I think, is the number that we have in India. So, the gender gaps persist in venture capital, and what that translates to is also a gap that we see in venture capital flowing into startups that are being founded by women and being run by women. And we'll come to that as well, because ultimately that's playing a role as well in terms of what we do as an ecosystem. And of course, the reality, and we all know this, is that diversity is a good thing, and not just it's not just the right thing to do; it's also good for the business. And I do believe that that's become clearer and clearer with time, and there are enough studies that today show that the diversity and particularly gender diversity has led to successful investments. It's led to successful teams. It's led to innovation, and there's enough studies out there that are showing this and helping move the needle. But I still think there's still a long way to go. So with that as a backdrop and context, I thought I'll delve into individually each of the stories that the professionals here have, because I think that in itself is interesting to sort of get going. And maybe I'll start with you, Lavanya, in terms of you've followed a traditional financial services path right through, and post MBA, and I think your MBA specialization was also in finance, and then hedge fund, and then Goldman, and then trifecta. Tell us a little bit about how that happened for you, and things that have there been points in time where you felt if I was a guy, this wasn't going to be happening to me.
Sure. Thank you so much for starting with me, first of all. I'm so happy to be here. Half this audience is family and friends, so really grateful for that as well. I grew up in Indiranagar. Such an honor to be back here, chatting about women and venture and entrepreneurship. Let me just give a little bit of the arc of my journey, and then I'll come to
Sure.
your specific question on gender. So grew up, like I said here, was fortunate to be born in a feminist household where both parents were all in charge of everything. Never felt like there were things I couldn't do as a result. My parents met at IMB, and so there was always a healthy respect for each other's careers and our collective lives as a family. And was always quite nerdy and academically inclined. So it looks like I always knew I wanted to do finance, but actually I alternately wanted to be a dancer, a doctor, a writer. Life is rarely so linear, right? But I think at some point I realized I love storytelling and the building of a narrative. I'm also quite quantitatively inclined. And somehow this path seems to fulfill both of those interests I have. And so it's amazing to be doing this for a living, right? To be, a cheerleader with a checkbook and to be investing in the future set of companies that will hopefully make lives easier for everybody and better. I started out thinking that I would work in the US. So I got my first job in Wall Street, total dream come true. And then I switched course because there was this amazing hedge fund in Silicon Valley that took a chance on me and had me join the investment team then. And that's when really I fell in love with the process of investing. How do you take disparate data points and craft a narrative? How do you go deep into the micro of a specific investment opportunity, but also zoom out and see where this fits into the larger context of where the world is going? And so investing was a love affair that started in 2006. And after the MBA, I came back here. At heart, I've always been a passionate Indian. I felt whatever I do, whatever little impact I can have would be lovely if it's here. And so have been investing here for a decade plus now, and was fortunate to be employee number 3 at Goldman, where I built that investment team, put about 500 million to work, pulled out $1 billion in exits. So really through cycle investing. And then when the fine gentleman at Trifecta Capital called and said, do you want to now build for Bharat? Do you want to set up a fund? Do you want to come do this with us? I thought it was an opportunity too good to pass up. And so my playground now is Digital India. I invest in growth and late stage companies. And super excited that in 1 year, God has been kind. We raised our fund and have deployed half of it as well. To your specific question on gender, and do you think...
And perhaps more particularly in Wall Street.
Yeah. Interestingly, at the very early part of my career, I almost felt like I was the only immigrant on my team, by the way, at the time. I was in an investment banking team that was focused on the real estate vertical, so lodging and gaming companies.
Right.
And I was the only immigrant at the time. And people actually, like partners, actually thought, oh, she's Indian. I'm sure she's good at math. So I actually got a lot of very positive momentum. I think as a result of the fact that I was nerdy, I did study at Wharton.
Right.
I did love finance, and Indians, I think, are known for being quantitatively inclined. So I think at the early part of my career, I didn't find it to be an impediment.
Okay.
And I was only in the US working
Right.
for 4 years in total. But I think what I've seen as I came back is people do view you as an individual and gender is one part of that identity.
Right.
There are other parts of that identity, right? I've lived in the US, I've studied really hard, I'm really nerdy, I'm really energetic. So there are many parts to that identity, but gender is an obvious visual one.
Yeah.
And so I would find in meetings, I would be sitting there and I would be the vice president leading that transaction maybe, but they would look to my associate to say, hey, what do you think? And I'd have to softly reclaim that power by trying to ask an intelligent question or leading with preparation to make sure that, hey, I'm the boss lady in this situation. I think, let me gently but subtly assert that. So there have been situations like that. But I think the good part has been that largely ecosystems in both India in finance and the US in finance where I worked have been very accommodative of excellence.
Okay.
Right? So I think if you lead with preparation, if you bring energy to the meeting, if you're truly there to understand, to dissect, to delve deep, people are just naturally welcoming
Sure.
of that. So I haven't found it hard to navigate in either context,
Right.
but I have found myself in situations where I've had to navigate.
Okay, no, that's helpful, and I do think that's similar to what how it plays out here as well, and we'll come to some of these. Swapna, it's in some ways again similar. You've always had an interest in finance, I'm guessing, and you started off with I know Vodafone, and then Ernst and Young, and then the urge to get onto the investing side. And I remember chatting about that in 2014 with you. How did that come through for you? And is this something that was ingrained growing up, and you always thought that? Did you always know you wanted to be in financial services? And how did you navigate, your journey up until now? And of course, you're now leading all of the investing for Qualcomm in India, which is top of the pack again when it comes to corporate VC.
Sure. So my journey is slightly different, and I would say my journey. I'm fortunate to be a woman, and I'll come to that why. Right. So I'm a Marwadi, which means, and I grew up in Calcutta, which means I grew up in this super conservative household, where probably my parents' ambition was by the age of 20, I should know how to make round chapatis and I should be sent off, right? So in that way, I think my impediment was a good thing for me, because then it put that fire in the belly to sort of get out of the ecosystem and build something for myself. So what happened with that impediment was also that I was in a Marwadi household where all I would hear conversations around me was risk management, working capital, business, dhanda, paisa, kaise banayenge, multiply, how will you multiply that, right? So I think all that in a way helped that, okay, finance is where you make money. Second, you need to get out of here. So all that was sort of put me into that Three Idiots bandwagon on some ways, that let me do my engineering, let me do my MBA, and then life will figure itself out. So of course I did my engineering, then I did my MBA. When I did my MBA again, I think the motivation was where you can make most money in life, and it sort of happened to be investment banking. But 2009 is when I passed out and the whole world was crashing. I said, look, this is one time when luck doesn't come to my rescue in some sense. What should I do? So I did second best. I did corporate finance. So I said, at least let me learn the nuances. Good news is I did telecom in 2009, which was the golden years for India. 3G was happening, Vodafone was excited, Airtel was excited. So I learned a lot. But after a while, it did get monotonous. And I knew that I could be there or I could make larger things happen for myself. So I did find a way into investment banking. I was at EY. I did that for 3 years. 2014 we met. It was a time when, too early in my life, I had sort of this midlife crisis. What am I doing? I'm cheerleading from the sides. I don't even believe in the transactions I'm running. I'm just doing it for money. Is it the right thing? And in those transactions, I think one of the things we also discuss, right, that impact is almost everywhere.
Sure.
Whatever you're doing in technology world, you shouldn't look at VC investing as impact investing, but investing to make real change in lives. Again, one of these conversations similar to yours, I met the person who was leading Qualcomm in India. He said, look, you know engineering, you understand finance. I think you should be on this side of the table. And that has been last 8 years of my life. I've been doing this. And again, at every instance where I thought that I was the only woman in the room and I had to sort of figure my life around it, I thought it was a great leverage for me to sort of push me to do it further, harder and harder. which really helped me grow through the ranks and sort of create a niche for myself.
And related to that, I think the question that I wanted to ask you specifically was, is it a challenge to for the voice to get heard when, especially in a setup like Qualcomm, where it's a large organization, there is hierarchy obviously, but also when you're leading the investments here and just getting that voice across, is that hard? Have there been challenges?
So again, I think there are two ways to look at
Yeah.
this. One is, look, I'm in India. People don't understand India. India is still a country which people think is of snake charmers. So you, of course, help change the narrative in a global
Sure.
context, right? So at a company like Qualcomm, you actually talk about how there is 1.3 billion population who's using smartphones, which is why your stocks are going
Yeah.
up, right? So then India becomes part of the popular narrative. And then the second part is really, now I think the startup ecosystem has eased it for us. I think the first wave was services.
Yeah.
The second wave was really sort of building Amazon lookalikes, Uber lookalikes, right? And now it's product country.
Right.
Now people look at as India as product country, building for the globe. So I would say it's not very difficult to
Okay.
navigate when you have the narrative working in your
Got
favor.
it. Got it. No, that's helpful, and we'll continue the rest of the conversation. I'll come to you, Maya. You've been in financial services for a while now, although I know you studied liberal arts and which is very different, I guess, from what one does now. And then you've been in the social impact space as well. But you're now, I guess, known more for the sorority that or the sisterhood that which is the Women in Investing Network. Of course, would love to hear more about your journey, but more importantly, how did the Women in Investing Network come about? Would be a good starting point. So yeah.
So in 2017, so I think I'm probably the youngest investor on this panel. I started investing in 2017. Before that, I was an entrepreneur, and I was running a social enterprise. And then before that, like Swapna, I was on the investment banking side, had my early midlife crisis saying, why am I doing this? Doing matchmaking between two ugly people. I want to actually be making impact. And when I became an investor in 2017, I found that in many occasions when I was either sitting with entrepreneurs or sitting at a conference or sitting with other investors, I was the only woman in the room. And that just got me thinking, where are the other women? How come I'm not meeting them? And the Women Investing Network is like anything else that was a solution or a product. It came out of a personal need. I wanted to meet other women investors. There wasn't a platform that existed. So I said, okay, let me just try an experiment. Let me create a platform and see how many people join. And it just rolled from there, I would say. We started off with 2 of us. Our first meeting was 6 people. And then we're now 250 plus across India. And it's just women introducing other women. And I've actually met women for the first time who I've interacted with on this platform for 5 years now. There are women who've come to us and said, you know what, I met someone at a conference the other day. She'd never heard of the network. I mean, she's met this other woman for the first time, but she was already evangelizing for us. So that kind of thing really makes me happy. What's been fantastic about the network is that I know for sure, I met my co-founder on the network. So I know that other people have. I know that people have found mentors. I know that they have definitely found other job opportunities. So I think it's really exciting to see how much value you can create just by bringing people together.
Yeah. Okay, and I think, there were other things that I do want to get into on just, networks like this and how else they could be doing the other things, and also just the larger scale impact, and we'll just come to that. I do think, though, Millie is the youngest investor. Yeah, I know. So you've been investing since 2018, I think, with Diageo, but
2020 October.
okay, 2020 October, I stand corrected. But of course, your journey prior to that again has been in financial services, being part of the founding team at the the ISFC, which is the Indian School Finance Company, and then you've been an entrepreneur. You've also been with the crowdfunding platform. I'm curious. Why did you choose investing as an option at this point in time, or did investing choose you? And what's it been like?
So, no, thanks for the question. Firstly, I was planted here. I had no, honest confession, I had no plans of becoming a VC. Finance, I used to say 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 into 2 is also 4. I know the difference, and that's enough for me. So, and now, of course, you learn a lot of financial engineering, when you jump into this space. So prior to this, I would say, serendipity. And I've been an entrepreneur 3 times over. After my last entrepreneurship stint, I think I realized one thing. Most entrepreneurs are getting jammed, jacked, failing because lack of funding. So I said, can I jump to the side? I think God listened to me somewhere, where you are on the side of solving the financial crisis. As they say, economics precedes all logic. So at the heart, I think I'm an entrepreneur. I am very often accused of being biased towards entrepreneur when I present business models and entrepreneurs in the in my boardroom within Diageo. In fact, Shrikant, I remember 2020 when Ventures was found in India, in Diageo. My first response was, they've hired me, they've planted me. You don't find products in this country in this space. Forget finding Alcobev products. Does it even call for a department? But surprisingly, at least all, irrespective of the size of the company we are looking at, all of them have women co-founders. There are teams which are fully women, run in the industry, and it is, trust me, a very, very, very complicated industry to run or to be even a part of. So for me, it's the courage of those women that gets me. From since this journey has started, of course, I'm witnessing, the other side. They always say that entrepreneurs are highly optimistic and VCs are supposed to be slightly more pessimistic or conservative. And I come from the entrepreneurial background, so I find it very, very difficult to be a little pessimistic. But of course, you work it out and you balance it out. That's all I'll say for my journey. My journey is very, very long. And I always say, unlike, all these women who have great, backgrounds and financial experience in the financial world, I always say I'm the Raju Bangiya gentleman. I learned it. So I was planted in every role that I took up, even in the past. I think somewhere I landed myself, and then I would pick it up instantly and just run with it. So if you ask me, I don't know. I just jump first and then figure out where the parachute will come from.
Sure. No, so I think, and this was helpful. So thanks for giving us that color, and I'll maybe get into the rest of the conversation. I know one of the charter that we all have is to be irreverent. So let's do our best in making that happen. Each of you are at the top of the pack in terms of wherever in terms of what you're doing and where you are at right now. What's your sense on why is it that there are only that small a number of women that are at the places that each of you are at? To start with, thoughts on that? Anybody? I'm not going to pick.
Okay, I'm actually going to go first and say that I think there are actually many more women than
what we think there are.
Yeah.
Okay.
There aren't enough.
Yeah.
But there's this emerging, and I think everyone over here in Lavanya will also know this. There's this emerging cadre of women who are coming up and saying that maybe I didn't follow the traditional path to get here. But there are several women who are now coming forward and saying that I'm going to lead funds, I'm going to set up a fund. A couple of years ago, this is somewhat dated, but a couple of years ago, we did a survey within the Women Investing Network, just to understand, what are people's career trajectories and aspirations. And 100 women responded, and out of that, 70 of them said that they would like to either be a partner at their own fund or start their own fund. So the aspiration is there, and I think as more women see those role models and also understand that you could get there through a non-linear approach, I think that's going to open things up a lot more. I think before it was harder because there were very, I would say, almost structured and hierarchical ways that you had to make your way through the system. There were partnerships that you had to vie for, sometimes in a very old boys network kind of manner. But now that things are opening up, I do feel a sense of optimism.
Yeah, and just for context, and given not many of us are as familiar with how the space operates, but in general within the VC world, you start off at junior levels typically as an analyst or an associate, and then principal maybe. So there's 2 or 3 levels, and then the aspiration for everyone is to make it to be partner. But it's an old boys club, which it is, and I think it's worse in the US because it's a white old boys club. And second, it's hard to get into that club because there's only that much of it's a function of how much money and how one is constantly able to raise more capital. And at some level, I also think the club doesn't necessarily want to open to too many people, not just men or women, but in general, wanting to keep it a little close. So it does end up being hard to break into, and I think that's just somewhat unique of a, I guess, glass ceiling, in the space that we operate, and that's what Maya is alluding to, which then means that growth options for professionals end up being that you make it to a certain point and then you branch out on your own, or you move elsewhere and then grow up the ranks. So just in terms of context. Go ahead.
Maybe I can jump in, and Shrikrishna, I wanted something irreverent. Right?
Sure.
So I remembered an interview I did once for a summer internship. I was in the US looking to come back and thought it would be good to spend a summer. And I spoke with a really senior private equity investor. I was super excited at the prospect of being an apprentice with him. And I was really well prepared for this interview. And I thought it was going really well because he was asking me questions and I was answering, and his body language was good. And we spent an hour. And at the end, he's like, Lavanya, I really like you. But if you come here, we're going to screw your life. Like, we have a horrible culture. We have no women. You're never going to see your family. And I just feel morally like you seem like a nice, happy person. I don't think I want to subject you to this. And that was not how I thought this interview was going to end. But I regained my composure and I said, well, if you think that my life is going to be terrible, that's likely to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I guess we'll stay friends and maybe you can, mentor me, but I guess we aren't going to be working together. But I think there is this sense, and this is obviously 12 years ago, and a lot has changed and will change, and we continue to get better as we learn more. But I think there was this sense that culture was kept by a few people in power, most of whom happened to be men. And in his mind, he thought culture was static, right? He didn't think, I think she's a good person we could hire. Let's see if we can make her comfortable. Right. I think that is the change I'm seeing now. I'm seeing companies saying, we want the best talent. We don't know how they look. They may, be men, women, they may be older, younger. We want to make the environment inclusive, right? I think that's the biggest positive improvement I've seen, where the people who have the power to drive that change are actively exercising that now. And I think anybody who said that in an interview now would probably get written up.
Yeah. No, rightly so. And related to that, I mean, it's true that heterogeneity makes for better decision making. Are you seeing that play out in what you're doing or at Qualcomm for you, Swapna? Go ahead.
So all the time, okay. Because I think, as I still remember 2020 when I presented the whole, the strategy to our board. I at least was measuring it against just the VC community and women power in the community. It came to 8. China has the highest, so it skews it to 12. If you remove China, it instantly falls to 8%. That's how low. So my first thing was I don't know how I'm going to survive in this industry, but glad to find so many women. Having said that, the entire space of, especially, I think finance is still, to a large extent, I don't know if others have that experience, is a lot male driven. Yeah. And there is, at least my build is always, there's more to a business than just finance, especially early stage. There's more to a business than just finance. And then I dig in, I connect the dots backward to, prove that this business is worth more than just the financial analytics that are going into it. So I think I don't see anybody else in the, we have ventures as I'm a one-person department as of now. And we have a larger support group from finance, from legal, from marketing. But I don't see especially departments where it is a very male-heavy even an attempt to get a 360 view. So I'm sorry, pardon, it's not meant to point any fingers at a gender. But at least in my experience, I'm not seeing an attempt to balance it with a 360-degree view. And to say that if finance was at all, we wouldn't have seen a lot of great entrepreneurs
Sure.
that we do today. So I am finding that one-sided,
And
opinion or just tabling one-sided views and scenarios, if I may put it that way. You do a lot of scenario planning in ventures. I find it quite one-sided.
And I mean, the fact that most women are smarter than men, does ego then play a role? You think that's coming in the way in a lot of these in these sort of situations, or have you encountered things like that where you are?
My current take
please.
on the situation. My favorite example is, for example, ICIC. I had this KV Kamath as a person who changed the way of industry, right? He groomed so many more women to become leaders, and then they became de facto standard, and the industry evolved. I similarly see that for venture capital industry. I feel the challenge that when we grew up, for example, right, if we thought about trailblazers, probably there was one Indra Nooyi, one Kiran Majumdar. So there were not too many people we could look up to. So not enough mentors to go to, not enough people to actually think about what you could do with your life, right? I think as this generation is evolving, right, now you have enough and more at the top, right? So aspirationally you can be there. And also logistically, you have people to guide you how to get there, right? So I think that is one change which has happened, which can really help you sort of get to there and change the diversity mix. And again, the old boys club is slowly dissipating. So when that's dissipating, the new blood is saying, look, we need diversity, not as a tokenism, but actually to make real changes on the ground.
And decisions.
So I'm
And
actually
I think
gonna
that's
jump
where the
in over
network
there.
comes in as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, because exactly what you're saying. Just today, I was having a conversation with a young woman who is not yet at partner level, which is kind of where you get to at the pinnacle. And she said that I'm looking for someone who can guide me on a specific aspect of, the path to get there. And so I put out a request, and 3 women responded, who are at partner level, who have done exactly that, who said, and I know that they're incredibly busy, but they said that I'm happy to spend the time to give her a sense of how this works, to share the good, bad, and the ugly with us. So exactly to your point, not only are there role models, but they're also approachable, and I think there is that sense of paying it forward.
You were going to say something, Lavanya, I think.
Yeah, so I was just saying I was reading some research on actual investment returns. And apparently there was this HBR study where if you increase the number of women in venture in your team by 10%, you start to see 1.5% better IRR, which if you're targeting, 30% IRR, that's a non-trivial upward movement. And more importantly, 10% improvement in the number of investments that actually make a profit. So both on the risk side, so risk mitigation, because one of the things in ventures, you see 0 and 100 outcomes, right? So both risk mitigation and improvement of overall return, you're seeing better decision making with diversity. So I thought it was nice that someone did a multi-decadal study to actually prove what anecdotally we all feel is
true. Understood. And how much of this is also, I think there's the fact about just being on the job and doing it well, right, is sort of one thing. How has that played out and for each of you, and maybe if you've got examples or experiences where, there is that more that you would have to need to prove because just what you're doing is not being seen as enough? Or you sense that that's actually not played out as much? Maybe now it's changing, but perhaps back then.
So I think
Go ahead.
one example is probably our boardrooms, right? I think there is this conscious choice that you should have more women in the boardroom because, again, you need more diversity in boardroom as well. And that doesn't happen. And that, again, reflects on our VC industry. I'm sure you feel it. When you're in boardrooms, typically you end up being the only women in the room. And then sometimes, I guess, because of the need, because men are from Mars and women are from Venus, I think you really need to put that extra attempt to do more homework at the same time to ensure that what you're saying makes more sense versus sometimes that is my thought process is what your male peers are saying, because you need to work maybe 1.5x harder to ensure that you have a legitimate presence in that room.
And does the fact that men don't know what it is like to walk into a room full of men, right? Does that play a role as well?
So let me address that. I was the only woman on my Goldman team when I joined. I was also employee number 3.
Right.
So, can't fault them for that, small numbers. We hired 2 women after that. Not because I did anything special. I just think we widened the funnel on top and some excellent women filtered through. And then a senior male member on the team said, "Abhi 3 tigresses hain, abhi thoda diversity chahiye." I was like, our team has 9 people. You are still 2/3 and you're still feeling confused that we are here. So I think, but I and I've been in many of these situations, right? The way I try to coach myself out of it is one, like, there's this concept of Hanlon's razor, right? Don't attribute to malice what is easier explained by stupidity, right? So I just ascribe it to that bucket. I'm like, okay, so-and-so is just being stupid right now. So let me not, say I don't want to work with him or make it a bigger issue than it is, but address it. So I said, hey, you are very good at maths, right? What is the percentage of men on the team? So he said 2/3. I said, yeah. So then he kept quiet, but I feel like it is a shock sometimes for the status quo to be challenged, and it will make itself known in these ways. I think maybe you don't have to use every comment as a teaching opportunity, but once in a while I do it because I think it's important for the message to land. After that gent, he's still a very dear friend of mine. He still calls me a tigress, but he's never said we shouldn't have more.
And I think I really like that point, which is that don't use every opportunity as a teaching moment. I think that there is also a role for not being combative and being sort of collaborative. I've been really lucky in that every colleague and boss that I've worked with has actually been very, very supportive and has enabled and facilitated anything that I needed to do. But I do see that that's not always the case. Again, I think if you come at it from the perspective of, yes, I mean, there are people who are not the nicest, but if you come at it from the perspective that most people have good intent, it's just that they don't see the missed opportunities and you present it to them, I think there's a lot of openness to working with you.
Right. So there's obviously one aspect of, growing up the ranks and all of that, but from the position that you all are at now, what's decision making like, and have there been challenges there in the sense that for a lot of the decision making in the venture capital world is every partner on the fund will have a vote, and so there's one voice, and that's broadly how it works. It's a little different with you. You're saying you're a solo team, so is there what's the overall decision making looking like, and how has gender played a role there? People being heard, not being heard, having to work harder, etc.
So if I talk of my organization, to be fair to them, I think diversity is like all the 3 layers at least that I have. My immediate boss, Ravi, knows her very well, Avanti. Then we have a CEO who's a woman. So all of us are. So I mean, that's not an issue.
Okay.
I mean, I always feel, sorry, Shrikant, like you're the diversity candidate right now. So,
Happy to be.
So in our organization, very often men become the diversity candidate.
Right.
So from an organization, but having said
Which is
that,
fantastic for an organization that's in alcohol and beverages. Right?
absolutely. And I mean, our factories are not open, but totally run by women. You should see how they fill the bottles, cap the bottles, test the bottles for defects. I mean, wonderful set of women running our factories. So for us, though I'm a one-person department, but we jokingly call it government of Diageo because the nature of the industry is such that I have layers and layers and layers and approvals and
Sure.
compliances more than approvals. And as a public listed company, it just becomes 10x. So There is a lot of voices out there, but I don't know, just being a rebel by nature, I would rather seek apology than approval. I say sorry and move on. I'm more active in the entrepreneurial circle than in the VC circle. Wherever I go, I'm referred to as Militant Millie, and I like it that way. So I think at least people's, and I have tons of experience, exactly like what Lavanya said. I think night, NASCOM called me. I still remember I counted 28 men. I was the only lady out there for their annual conference, and this gentleman came and sat next to me, and he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Diageo." And he was from some computer background, and he said, "Oh, you're not good for my liver." I said, "Oh, what do you do?" I said, "Make computers." I said, "Oh, you're not good for my gray cells, for my back, and for my cervical for sure. My industry is regulated, yours is not. I think you need a lot more regulation." So I think sometimes people get funny with us. I don't know if it's the woman factor. People clapped and he had to leave the room and go, and I'm very proud of it. I mean, if you blame me, I throw him out of the room. And then I spoke. They gave me a good half an hour where I spoke, saying I object to this. We've never said alcohol is like milk. Subah piyo, sham piyo, raat piyo. We've never said it. We are very, very responsible drinking, organization. So, I mean, if I had a presentation, the first thing I would have to present here is a responsible drinking slide. So we are, a good organization. So you can't treat us like that. So I've had tons of situations like this. As I said, I believe in settling scores there and then. I don't have time for diplomacy. I'm called, by the way, by my global head, a waste of diplomacy again. So I like it that way. I think we don't need to be loud. But for some reason, I don't know. I mean, people take their chances. Yes, sure. People take their chances. And sometimes if you know your game well, like weekday or weekends, startups is all I know in life, what to do, and how to do. So I live my life with a lot of entrepreneurs and in that world. And hence, I'm very clear, you know better than me, then please go ahead. And you have to listen to experts. Of course, I listen to all my financial experts, marketing experts, compliance experts. There are a whole lot of compliance issues in our industry. But beyond that, sometimes it's good to be, because I say so. So at least I am one of those who say.
And so both, I guess, staying on the same theme for the two of you, given that decision making is a part of each of these. Is a part of the process when it comes to making the investments. What's that been like? And is there a conscious? Is there that level of awareness that diversity helps with these decisions, and one needs to hence, or has it been a challenge to have the voice heard? What's it been like as you put things to vote in your respective firms?
So I think for us, I think corporates generally do better at diversity versus I would say mainstream VCs, because again it's part of your whole charter. So our IC has maybe 2 women versus 5 men, so it's a much better IC, right? But what I've also seen is again very, very anecdotal. I don't know, you have to research to figure out if it's true for everyone, but generally when there are women on the IC or board, it's more collaborative, which means it's more conversational versus I would say dictatorship in some sense. And the second is when there are women, it's more probing versus non-probing, right? So what I've seen is when there are women on IC, I think there are questions which make you think about double-clicking, triple-clicking on things you have already been not thinking in a certain direction. Versus I feel men sometimes do not bring that to the table. So I have had very good experience with a diverse IC where actually having them makes it more collaborative, more probing, and making me also think whether this is worth pursuing or not.
Sorry, and just for context, IC refers to an investment committee, which is basically the decision-making body of a fund or of an investing group, where someone has very generously parted with their money and given it in your custody, and now you can play with it, but you can't technically fully play with it. There is an investment committee that makes sure that there is a fiduciary responsibility for making these decisions. So that's what Swapna was referring to. How does it play out? And what's been your experience, I guess, with being in the US versus being here? I think that's sort of one question I had. And also large organization like Goldman that's been around for many, many years versus Trifecta, which is a startup in its own in some sense.
No, absolutely. I think we had very multi-layered decision making at Goldman. And I think the unit of reference was geography in a lot of cases, because you have circle of competence where you understand, the ecosystem in depth. So I felt a lot of the burden of education and proof lay on the India team, because it was global IC,
Sure.
and there's deals from different regions, and there's a burden of education, and then there's a convincing,
Sure.
a consensus building exercise.
Which is likely the same, irrespective of whether there was a woman or not.
Exactly. So I think because it was so process oriented, there was a lot of data that was prepared. We would prepare like 100-page memos that would get sent out. They would be pre-read. We would be quizzed. So I honestly didn't feel like I was at a disadvantage getting heard. And at Trifecta, I'm in the privileged position of being the person making decisions with my partners. So it's
which is great.
It's been lovely.
Okay, got it. And I think the other piece, of course, on while this is about women in investing and at the venture capital fund level. How are you seeing that, and how would you like to see that translate into where the money is going in terms of actually being able to back more women founders? Because again, if you look at stats, that number is going to be a very small number. There aren't that many women founders that there are a number of women founders, but not that many that raise VC capital, that raise venture money. I think this is true of both, much more so in India, perhaps. And I think to the point that you made, there's also perhaps an assumption that women founders are not aggressive, and one doesn't need to be shouting to be aggressive. How do you see that right now, and how would you actually like to see that change, particularly with the work that each of you are doing?
So I'll go first with that, and I think I forget the numbers, but there's actual data to show that when there is a diverse investment team, the investments that they make also tend to be more diverse in the types of founders that they back, not just women, but just in general, different types of backgrounds. People maybe not from India One, things like that. The way we look at it at the Women Investing Network is that we would like to see more women in decision-making roles. Because it's not an exact one-to-one corollary, but like I said, the data does show that there is a difference in the decision making, and as you said, in the probing and the types of relationships that are built. From the flip side, I've actually done this research, as part of another study, as part of another group that I'm part of. I spoke to a number of women entrepreneurs, and they were very clear that it's an intimidating position to be in when you are sitting on one side of the negotiation table, and there are 5 men on the other side, very often asking questions like, is there even a market for this product? It's only selling to women. That's very niche. How do you know that you have the staying power to actually see this enterprise through? So I think that
I've even heard, what will you do once you start a family?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, how are you going to manage once you start a family? And so I think that from both sides, it will make a lot of difference in terms of building the pipeline. Women entrepreneurs have said again and again that there's a higher level of comfort in pitching. Even if the response is still a no, somehow they feel that there's more comfort in pitching to a team that is a bit more gender diverse. And at the same time, the data is also showing that it works the other way.
I could share from my experience, right? So at Qualcomm, I'd started this program called Qualcomm Women Entrepreneurs India Network.
Okay.
And my liver was similar to yours to start. That is, I just don't see enough women entrepreneurs pitching to us. Forget funding them, right?
Yeah.
Why don't we see enough? And that number is abysmally low.
Yeah.
Especially in frontier tech that we do, probably 5%, even lower, right? And then when you talk to these women entrepreneurs, I think the biggest problem is similar to our industry in some sense, is women want to know everything about everything before starting up. So there has to be more coaching, nurturing needs to be done, right? Second is they don't have trusted networks. Again, the boys club in some sense, that there are enough male entrepreneurs who talk to each other, understand, but there are not enough women entrepreneurs to talk to each other. And third is lack of mentorship. So today, if I'm an entrepreneur, I can reach out to 10 male entrepreneurs who have done it. It's just easier versus a women entrepreneur. Who should I reach out to who have already done this in some sense?
Lesser number of role models.
So with that, we started this program, and it's been very good. We have about 25, 26 women entrepreneurs already graduate. And the biggest takeaway for me was what they appreciated most, forget networking, learning, is the need of one mentor who can actually guide them through this journey. So when I'm having this VC conversation, can you tell me how to curate my pitch for 5 men VC versus 4 men plus 1 women VC, right? So in some sense, just those small little nudges, if somebody can handhold them, I think if we fix the funnel, we can fix everything else at the top, but the funnel really needs fixing.
Okay. We'll move to a fun topic, pay parity. How, I mean, and again, I can say and I don't have enough experience, but I know that this was never a distinction that I've ever seen or would ever make. But I'm curious, is that a problem here in India? I've read that it is a challenge in the US in VC and in PE that, of course, there's two aspects to it, right? There is the fixed pay, but there's also the profit share. And typically it does look like, if it's the male partners tending to grab a larger share or perhaps a disproportionate share of the profit share. But curious from your experience of what you've seen, is that a challenge here in India or not so much?
So I'm a corporate VC, I don't know answer, but I will actually negate that by saying that some of my friends in Europe have told me that women partners actually get paid more because there's not enough women partners to work with.
Okay.
I actually haven't seen that much
Yeah.
of it.
Okay.
It's much harder to get to that point. So to become partner is significantly harder. But once you're there, and at every level, it seems to be, at least from my experience, relatively fair. This is what the role is. This is what the role is
Role
worth,
pays, yeah,
and this is therefore what you get.
Yeah.
Versus, men are paid different from women.
Okay.
Maybe that's a survey you should run with our network.
But it's hard to find this data also. I mean, some of this is not very transparent. Yes.
No, I
Mary.
was just going to, one is in general on payments. I was going to add to Sapna's point that mentorship is a critical need. And even for myself as a VC, start cutting checks, guys.
Right.
Cut some checks for these women entrepreneurs. I would add that. And for a pay parity, I think not VC world, but average. Again, I'm a corporate VC. So I have colleagues, women in other departments. Not sure why. I don't know if we don't negotiate well. Somewhere
There is data that says
yeah.
it's-
So somewhere
yeah.
we don't want to come across as being very money minded or very pushy. Yeah, she's right. She's absolutely right that we don't want to be seen as money minded and very pushy when it comes to money. So I think we've not been able to really negotiate very well. I, at least in my experience, whatever people have shared with me in corporate, that's mine.
Yes.
Even in Indra Nui, for example, right, in her own book, she says, I didn't ever really go and negotiate my salary. And there is data which suggests that men who were handling corporations that were not as large were getting paid way more than she was. So I think I read some IFC research preparing for this panel, which said there's approximately $48 trillion of developing markets GDP that's lost due to gender disparity in wages. So again, they've done the research, not me, but it is potentially a staggering number. I think, difficult to pinpoint because a lot of these are not reported. But I think in general, if people in power who are the ones actually deciding how the bonus pool gets split, start to take a more nuanced view of contribution and not just communication of that contribution, I think it'll really help bridge that, at least to the extent in our industry we can.
I have one question which I'll ask of each of you, more like hot takes before we finish. But maybe we can open it up to the audience for questions. And how much time do we have, sir? Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead. Oh, is it? And then audience Q&A? Okay. No, so I thought, I was just reading today that apparently Christine Lagarde of the IMF said that if Lehman Brothers was Lehman Sisters, the crash wouldn't have happened or some such thing, right? So I thought I'll do, hot takes from each of you on what will it take to create a level playing field? So what will it take to create a level playing field? In broadly in financial services, more specifically with the work that with the space that we operate in.
I think another 30 years, which is basically as more and more of us rise to the top, I think
Right.
there will be. So I think men generally hire more men because they like to see people like them. Similarly, I think when more women sort of
Right.
become at the level, they will also try to do their little payback in some sense. So I think another 30 years, I think it will be a fixed problem.
So I'll just say once, I used to work for Deloitte Consulting at that time. And one of my mentors told me that, Millie, the rules of this world, whether you like it or not, were devised mostly by men. And of course, because they had the right, they did it in their favor. If you have the courage and the capability, then turn it in your favor. So I think that's what women need to go unapologetically, just turn it in our favor. And I agree with Sapna, as more and more women rise, I think it will automatically build in
Right.
that system,
Yeah.
like what you call intelligence. So the intelligence will build
Yeah.
in the system.
I think maybe treat your resources as individuals, because I think there's all types of women in organizations, right? There's single women, married women, moms, women caring for elderly people, but we're half the population of the world. So I think if you want to have the best talent represented, retained, and producing with energy for the organization, I think give them the support they need as an individual for the more difficult life phases. And I think you'll see a lot of loyalty, you'll see a lot of long-term, I think, value getting created.
And related to that though, Maya, what's your vision for the network, and where would you like, and how would you have liked to see this 30 years from now, like
It's a
Swapna's
really
saying?
awful question for someone who started with no vision and a WhatsApp group. So, I think just to continue to do what we're doing, which is facilitate connections, facilitate learning, facilitate mentoring, but to do more of to also do more of being a voice for this growing community, and enabling that community to also set some of the standards, to create some of these pathways for other people. I think that's
very
enough
integral to what
to aim for.
I really think it is integral to how the ecosystem will play out and shape up, which is why I asked you that. So thanks. If people have questions, if you could come up to the mic there, please, and ask your question, that will be helpful. Thank you. Please introduce yourself before asking the question.
Hey everyone, Aarti here. So it was, and by the way, I'm very, very new to Bangalore. So this is the first time I came to BIC, knew the co-founder of
Welcome.
BLF. And yeah. So this is just, like more like a takeaway, but more like a probing question to all the women in power here. So on the likes of Millie, right? So you mentioned that there's a lot more to business, a lot more to VC, venture capital as such, and a lot more to investing about a business than just on a financial angle. Don't you think we ourselves, as VCs are setting the stereotype for women to come from a background of financial services only to become a partner or possibly go become a managing partner and all of that? Don't you think there should be more, something more open for women to be from a non-financial background, but still be able to, get into a, say, investment banking or a VC fund, or be it private or corporate fund? I still see that lacking, so I'm just trying to understand.
So I would say absolutely, at least I am non-finance totally. Of course, you have to get your basics right and you have to understand it, and you get teams who do it for you. But ultimate decision will be with you always. That's for, I don't know if I can turn that to Lavanya for
Yeah,
you.
no, I think
you
three
come
out of
from the
three out
financial
of
world.
3 out of 5 people here don't have
You can go for
don't have a background. Don't have a background
So
in
with
financial services.
now financial tools available, at least for me, you feed in the formulae and it gives you, the output. It is not that, and if you need, we can have a chat, tons of courses on finance for non-finance people. You just need, honestly, to get the economics will always precede all logic, and you're looking for a profitable business. But trust me, all businesses, at least that I'm seeing, have started with great consumer insights. We have connected the dot backwards when it has come to finance. And they were built on great belief in a product, at least the ones that I indulge in. So for me, that belief in your own product and an insight towards, what the consumer needs or what will fly, that forms the basis of a good business. And from there, then we also do market analysis, financial analysis, and then it's all the backward integration. So for me, at least, these are two critical.
Fundamentally, investing is a people business. So that's really where it comes to. Cool. I think we are out of time. So thank you very much. I guess, many years ago, women would have to fight to be at the table. You're now creating the table. So more power to you, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you all. Your stories were as personalized as a fingerprint, yet there was a lovely cosmic design to what all of you all said. And loved your honesty, loved your candor. It was really unplugged. And thank you, Sri Krishna, for moderating the panel, for drawing out the stories.